Everyone, I was listening to a podcast this morning. It's the Money Matters podcast with Jack Mallers, spelled Mallers. Jack Mallers is the founder and CEO of Strike, Strike. There's another company that has a similar name, but this is Strike, Strike. And anyway, so Jack Mallers runs the Money Matters podcast, and his usual guest is Matt Odell, which is his largest investor in Strike. Well, on the podcast, someone posted, because they do these things live, someone posted in the chat, don't ever sell your Bitcoin. Because they were talking about using Strike's bill pay feature to pay for stuff with Bitcoin. So somebody just, types, don't ever sell your Bitcoin. And Jack Mallers stops and he's like, okay, we have to clear up this misunderstanding. When is it appropriate to sell your Bitcoin and not sell your Bitcoin? He said, in the early stages of someone's adoption of Bitcoin, that is good advice. Now, I'm paraphrasing what he meant here. In the early stages, that is good advice. You want to spend your US dollars and save your Bitcoin because the Bitcoin is the better money. So you want to spend your less good money and save your better money, which is Bitcoin. But as you get farther and farther down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, you get to a point where you don't have any US dollars left to spend. So when you are living life on a Bitcoin standard, which I almost completely am, there isn't US dollars to pay for anything because it's all Bitcoin. And so when someone said, so it was interesting because this back and forth indicated that the people on the chat who were asking the question had a fiat currency mindset. A fiat meaning, made up currency like the US dollars. They had a fiat currency mindset rather than a Bitcoin mindset. And a fiat currency mindset assumes that money is US dollars and Bitcoin is an investment, which is not true. Bitcoin is an investment and a currency. One day it will just be a currency, but right now it's an investment and a currency because it's so early in such an early stage of the adoption process. So when you have that mindset, it's easy for somebody on the chat to tell Jack Mallers, don't ever spend your Bitcoin. Why are you buying stuff with Bitcoin? And Jack Mallers' answer is, which is my answer is, because I don't have any US dollars. And for the person on the chat who, of course, thinks they have the moral high ground of high and mighty, they're like, yeah, but I don't spend my Bitcoin. It's like, well, look, if you're buying shelter, clothing, transportation, food, if you're buying anything that improves your life and you're spending US dollars, those US dollars could have been already converted into Bitcoin. And if you have not yet converted them into Bitcoin, then you're sitting on US dollars that are melting away when you could be sitting on Bitcoin. So I get this question myself now and then when I talk about that I live almost exclusively on the Coinbase debit card, meaning I buy virtually everything with the Coinbase debit card. And from time to time, people ask me like, but why would you spend your Bitcoin? Well, first of all, I'm always buying more Bitcoin. Every time a paycheck hits, literally, like immediately it goes into Bitcoin. So I'm sitting on US dollars basically almost never. So it immediately goes into Bitcoin. But then I'm spending Bitcoin with the Coinbase debit card. But people are like, well, why are you spending Bitcoin? It's like, well, what am I supposed to spend? I need to eat, I need shelter, I need clothing, and I need transportation, and I need to pay for that somehow. And again, you can tell when people ask the question, their assumption is, well, why don't you pay for it with dollars? And the answer is, well, because I don't have dollars. That's the whole point. I don't have dollars because the dollars I had were already converted to Bitcoin. If I had dollars, yes, I would buy stuff with dollars instead of Bitcoin because I would save the Bitcoin and I would spend the dollars. But once you get far enough down the Bitcoin rabbit hole and understand the value of Bitcoin as compared to US dollars, then there's no reason to hold US dollars anymore. And so Jack Mallers, prides himself on holding literally zero US dollars. His total US dollar holdings for Jack Mallers is zero. He never holds any dollars, not even a penny. He has zero US dollars, which means it's all Bitcoin, which means if he wants to buy something, he spends Bitcoin, which means when you spend Bitcoin, you're selling Bitcoin. That's the way it works. Spending is selling, regardless of whether that's the US dollar or Bitcoin. When you part with it, you are using it to an exchange. You are using it in a trade, and that means it's not yours anymore. So anyway, I thought it was interesting. I guess I wanted to do a video about it, and partially As an endorsement, I think I'm a big fan of Jack Mallers. If you don't mind the language of his podcast, there's a lot of insights with Jack Mallers, Matt Odell, and just people who have been in the Bitcoin world for 13 or more years now. They have a lot of historical perspective. For what it's worth, another thought that Jack Mallers shared in the podcast episode I was talking about today is he said, look, um, any asset tends to chop up and down around round numbers. He's like, Bitcoin's done the same thing. It did it at $1, it did it at $10, it did it at $100, it did it at $1,000, it did it at $10,000. Now it's likely to do it at $100,000, which is humans like round numbers. And, when people are, when you get to a round number like 100,000, you're going to go above it, below it, above it, below it, above it, below it. You don't know how long. It's just there's a lot of people that psychologically are willing to sell when Bitcoin's above $100,000 because that's just their brain tells them it's expensive. There's a lot of other people that are willing to buy below $100,000 because their brain tells them it's cheap. Now, the truth is, it's just a number. I mean, a round number is no better than 99 versus 100 versus 101. It's not like $100,000 has any special meaning. But humans are, emotionally driven psychological beings, and they do respond to round numbers, which is why people price things at $9.99 instead of $10. Does the one penny matter? No, but humans are irrational in their decision making, and they prefer to buy at $9.99 instead of $10. Just humans are humans. So the same thing. So Jack Mallers is saying, hey, we may chop around up and down, trading sideways, grinding, whatever you want to call it, range bound, in the sort of, 100,000 ish range for a while before it breaks down because that's just standard human psychology. But anyway, the point of this video was if you have US dollars to spend on stuff, I would spend those. If you get to the point where your conviction on Bitcoin is as high as mine, which is like stratospherically high, and you don't have US dollars anymore, then the reason you don't have those US dollars is because basically every time you get your hands on some paper money that someone else can print, you immediately exchange them for hard money that nobody can print. And when you do that, you eventually are buying everything with Bitcoin. And when people say, well, why would you buy things with Bitcoin? The answer is because I don't have US dollars. And if their response is, well, I buy things with my dollars, the question is, well, why do you still have any dollars? Why have you not converted those dollars you're talking about into Bitcoin? That way they can sit in Bitcoin before you spend them. And that way, at least they're not inflating while you're waiting to spend them. So figured I'd do a quick video with some highlights on, don't spend your Bitcoin. Great advice when you're early in the process. Late in the process, Bitcoin's all you have, which means it's the only thing you spend. But a lot of people don't understand that. In the future, everybody will spend their Bitcoin because Bitcoin will be the future monetary system of the world. It will be essentially the only currency anybody uses. And so everybody will spend their Bitcoin anytime they do anything that they do today with US dollars because it will be the currency. And that's its purpose and that's its intent. And when we get to that point, Bitcoin will be certainly worth more than $1 million per coin, probably worth more than $5 or $10 million per coin. But that's, years and years and years into the future. I think the easy path is Bitcoin getting above $1 million a coin in the next 5 years. That seems like a very clear path. Probably in the next, let's say 5 years. Next 5 years, Bitcoin above 50,000, or sorry, above $1 million per coin seems very doable. That's about a 10x. And then again, I think it keeps going up past that. It's just nobody knows how high. So have a great day, everyone. Always a pleasure. And I'm here for anything you need. Thanks.